Two Citroen BXs. Blimey. In this video, things are getting dangerously cool as I take a look at a Volkswagen Kombi. Now, I'll be honest, I wasn't sure I would ever get the chance to drive one of these. So high have values risen in recent years. They have become very much dangerously trendy and popular, and down with the kids and all that good stuff. Yeah, I wasn't necessarily expecting this opportunity, but I'm very glad I have it nonetheless. You will see that this one is beautifully unmodified, really. Yes, it's got some smart alloys on, which are some replica alloys of a type that were available in period, so I fully approve. But note the ride height. It has some, and very pleasing it is too. Also pleasing is that this one came from the UK and it was driven a good way of the way here as well, which I'll get to in a moment. But we'll first talk a bit of history here. This is the Type 2 Volkswagen, and just to prove it's a Volkswagen, look, it says Volkswagen. And of course famously based on the Volkswagen Beetle, so we've got the engine at the rear here. The idea for the Type 2 was actually the brainchild of a Dutch importer, one of the first to import Volkswagens into the Netherlands, and I think he also had a hand in importing them into America as well, one Ben Pon. So this was his thinking. He saw basically a platform chassis based on a Beetle used to transport parts around the Wolfsburg factory when Volkswagen was just starting out. And he said, well, we could surely base a van on this platform. And it turned out that wasn't actually going to work. The floor pan of a Beetle wasn't strong enough, so the Type 2 had its own chassis and its own chassis designation as well, the Type 2. And the Type 2 covered 3 generations effectively. The splitties, the bay windows, and then the T25s were the last of the Type 2s with the rear engine layout from the 1970s into the 1980s. These splitties are the T1. So this is where it gets a bit confusing, because you get types and then you get Ts, and Ts are T for Transporter. It was the Volkswagen Transporter. There were later Caravels and Kombis, as here, that offered a mixture of both worlds, but Transporter was the base, the van was a Transporter, and this is one of those. And take you in for a closer look at some of the details while I natter away here. So these are the T1s with the famous split windscreen and a surprisingly aerodynamic shape as well. I think 0.44 on the CD, the coefficient of drag, which is remarkable when you consider how bluff fronted they are. But the split screen windscreen is one reason for that, because the panes no longer face flat into the airflow, but also the side windows curve round as well. We've got this very curvaceous front, no air intake, although there are air intake grills here, which we will get to. So a very distinctive style on these split screen campers. This one dates from 1965. It would have originally had a 1.5 litre engine, but and that was the year the 1.5 was introduced onto the Transporters, the T1s. But in 1967, the bay window, much larger, T2 took over. So that was still a Type 2 T2, whereas this is a Type 2 T1. And the bay windows carried on the game, became very popular in Australia, in America, and all around the world, really. So this particular splitty, like I say, built in 1965, delivered to the UK, where Devon, down in Devon, turned it into a caravette, not a caravanette, a caravette. So it is a camper. These often get called VW campers because so many were made into little camper wagons, so this is one of those. Then at some point the original owner's son emigrated to Canberra, and for some reason, rather than fly, which I guess would have been prohibitively expensive, or ship it, he decided to drive it. So this Volkswagen drove all the way from Solihull in the West Midlands, a place of which I am very familiar, down through Africa, and was then boated for that last stretch across the water to Australia. We'll start taking a look inside now and try to imagine what that journey would have been like. I mean, I love this one because it's imperfect, and there's a very good reason for that. The current owner has owned this vehicle since 1998, and until only a few months ago, this was his daily driver. And he and his wife would use this van to take the kids to school, to go commuting, but they still use it as a camper today, which I find utterly beautiful. Without further ado, I will clamber aboard. You will notice, obviously, you've got to get above the window, and it must be said, if you lower one of these, it makes it easier to get into. Notice a bit of gaffer tape here on the seat repair. Full approval granted. This is not a perfect example, which makes me happy. I love imperfect cars. It shows they've had a life. So getting in, watch for the knees. Bit of an ordeal, but now we're in. It's lovely. Got this huge steering wheel with the Castle logo and a good horn there as well. It's been converted to a kilometre speedo. It would have been mile an hour originally, being a UK vehicle. Not very much in the way of switchgear. We've got indicators left. In the Continental style, we've got wiper control. Oh, that's a surprise. No parking on those. I wasn't expecting those to be on without the ignition, but there you go. Apparently they are on. So we've had the wiper bonus early. We'll come back to that. We've got lights over this side and a foot-mounted dip switch down here for your main beam. You'll notice we've got the spindly. Oh, going to close the door, are we? Gear lever for the 4-speed transmission, handbrake, and then the pedals, much as you'd expect. Very similar to a Volkswagen, with big organ pedal, throttle, and that's the brake pedal and the clutch. Thereabouts. We've got the back of the headlamp bowl down here. I've no idea what this is, but I suspect that has a purpose. It looks very purposeful, whatever it is. No doubt the comments are now flying along telling me what that is, but we don't know for now. There would have been a radio. It's sadly missing, but we've still got the knobs, so you can play with knobs to your heart's content. Tiny little ashtray. We've got some ventilation down here. I think those are heater outlets actually, so you can have heater to the feet or here, and apparently it's not that bad. But that vent above the windscreen feeds this box here, and very mechanical sound. So I can have the air coming out here, or at a rear mounted area there if I want to make the people in the back happier, or presumably I could have a bit of both. I might set it for a bit of both, and fresh air floods in when you're driving along. There's also a control on the side to just turn it off completely when you're in full-on winter mode and don't want the fresh air quite so much. The tap down here, it looks like a tap, but it just goes to the rear when it's actually attached. It isn't at the moment because the owner's planning some restoration work. That's what turns the heater on, like the levers down on the floor of a Porsche 911, and I would assume that one tells the heat where to go. This is the main heater feed up to the demister pipes. We've got a lovely little wooden extra here, this little clip-on parcel shelf, which I think is absolutely adorable. A grab handle, a seat which has a seatbelt for one but could take two people in pre-seatbelt days, no doubt. But yeah, it's a really nice driving position actually, and there's good visibility because it's just glass all the way around. Let's talk a bit more about the wipers, seeing as they're there. So you'll note that they do leave corners all over the place, but it's actually swiping the area right in front of me very nicely. And because this window is angled, it actually gives quite a good view at the passenger window as well. So that's all the good. Let's hop into the rear. Access into the rear then is via this door, which opens like so and goes back onto its rubber buffer like so. There is a second door which one can open also, which has its own rubber buffer on the door this time, and there you go. That gives very good access into the rear. Not all of the equipment is here for the Devon conversion, so we've got the odd missing link, but there would have been a cooker in here originally, and you could open the window then and let the fumes of your cooking out. I'm dropping bits of my stuff everywhere. I'll just tidy that into my bag. But we've got sort of crew cab seating sort of style here. We've got some seat belts back here for the young guns. You just, yeah, on your own in those seats, but then if you crash you're going to go backwards anyway. Some beautiful patination back here, little pop out windows. I might pop that out actually because I might be glad at the ventilation when I'm driving along. And you'll note we've got this table behind, and that's because this slides out and comes down here, and that's what completes the bed. I'm not going to test the bed. Apparently it's a little on the short side, but if I just move this cushion over here temporarily, you will see that not only have we got these delicious sliding panels for a bit of extra storage and your pens, we've got a bit of extra space here, so you can fold that down, although that's going to be a little lumpy under your bed, but maybe you won't notice. And then we've got a magazine rack, which apparently goes over here somewhere in your bed. I can't really demonstrate that very easily one-handed, or it goes here to make the bed a little wider. Yeah, a lot of thinking gone into this vehicle. And then you've got storage variously, although seemingly no way of lifting that. That's interesting. Oh no, there we go. So, you know, if you're family camping, storage is everything you need. So just bring the cushion back over here. I suspect these are replacement foam items for the originals, which are probably long gone. Bit of storage under here as well. Just better lock that back before I drive off, because otherwise that will be mildly disastrous. And a little cupboard here too, and yes, that would be where your cooker goes. All mod cons indeed. Oh, it's really difficult to do one-handed. I don't recommend it. Now, something I always did find a bit odd about these vehicles is being rear-engined, you lose a bit of load flexibility. I mean, it works quite well in a camper because you've just got extra place to have extra trays and a few tools and things like that. And probably you could put the child that misbehaved most back here. There's even a little flap here just for a little more storage, and there are the legs that screw into this to turn it into a table when you're having your dinner, which means it's a fully functioning table outside the vehicle, not just inside. So that's quite a nice touch. But ultimately you're losing quite a lot of space here to the fact there's an engine. And I noticed this, and I think I might have just found what the little doofer is for. Let's go and grab the little doofer. I think this is the engine cover opening device. So if you haven't got one of these, you can't get into the boot. Yeah, the engine cover, whatever. Am I right? Oh, it feels like I'm right. There we go, we are in. That's quite smart. And oh, let's do that again. Look at that catch. How beautifully engineered is that? And so have a brief pause while a plane flies above us, way above the cloud. But here is the engine. It's a 1584cc, producing probably around 54 horsepower. This engine is actually ex-military and replaces the original 1500cc engine. Oh no, I've forgotten what the 1500s were. Were they 1493? I could be wrong in that. But yeah, carburetor here, distributor here, so you can do a fair bit of engine access, not too badly up here. But obviously if you need to check not spark plugs, because they're there, rocker covers, get them off so you can do the valve timing. Presumably you have to come under here to do that, and you'll notice how there's a little side clip there. And as you look at this engine, if you've seen my videos on my little Invercar Model 70, you may see similarities like the strainer down there on the bottom of the engine. It's very similar, because I think the Steyr-Puch engine in my Invercar is pretty much a copy of a Volkswagen engine. The distributor is in the same place and everything, and the manifolding looks the same too. Effectively there's a preheater for the carburetor in this pipe, so you've got the two manifolds going into one big pipe in the middle. None of this is even slightly important, but there you go, I thought I'd tell you anyway. But yeah, ex-military engine. It was designed here in Australia to power radio equipment. So that means this vehicle has a link to a Land Rover Stage 1 V8 I drove in New Zealand on this trip. I wasn't expecting that one. Right, shall we? I'll just put that key out of my hand so I don't damage the paintwork. And there we go. We shall put the key back. Now we know what it does. Important questions on the internet have been answered. Beautiful. Right then, let's go. First of all, I'm going to put my seatbelt on. Because regardless of whether it had them originally, it has them now. And oh, that's going to hit my seatbelt, my microphone rather, so I'll just move the microphone up a bit. And we shall get this show underway. It's just a traditional key start. I say traditional, it's more traditional to have a button. There we go, the flat 4 from. Very, very distinctive, very, very lovable, I think, that engine note. And we shall operate the gear. The gear shift is surprisingly good, very precise, despite that little mechanical, well, long mechanical run. I'm just going to move that because I realise I'm pinching my chest hair in the mic, and that's quite painful. Handbrake is a bit of a stretch away. Wouldn't work with a static seatbelt, that's for sure. And we shall pull away. There's quite low gearing because they ran reduction boxes to lower the gearing on these. This actually has a carrying capacity of 1 ton. So to carry 1 ton with 54 brake horsepower, you need to reduce the gearing. So that's what they did, and quite remarkable when you think the first of these had a 1200cc engine and about 30 brake horsepower. So it's amazing they were able to move at all. We shall drive out of this little park area and go for a drive. But here we are, pottering along second gear, and it's really quite pleasant. Lovely view out. And I can also say, because we had a quick run out with the owner earlier, you get a lot of attention. Everyone loves the splitty bus. It is such a pretty design, and they have such a face, such a cute face, that you can't help but love them. At least that's what I reckon. The ride is pretty decent. It's not superb. It is a commercial vehicle, effectively. But there we go, over the speed hump. A bit strange because of course the wheel is underneath my bottom. Dainty little stalk for the indicator. Would be self-cancelling but isn't, so that suits me just fine. This big old steering wheel. Oh, my bag is coming to say hello, go away. Lovely bit of ventilation through the sliding window. No winding windows on these first gen. It's just a lovely vehicle to drive, and this is a big moment for me. I am properly excited. I've never driven a splitty. The way values are going, I didn't think I ever would, so I think I'm going to enjoy this. The steering is a little vague and wondery because it is a steering box, but no great hardship. Hear quite a lot of transmission noise. It's not all that audible here because we're up the front and the engine is miles away, and that makes these Type 2s a lot more pleasant to drive than many contemporary commercials. You think the Commerce Space van, some of the Leyland models, Citroen H van, Renault Estafette, the engine is here, very much right next to you, so which means you get all the noise. Full bore acceleration. It's really not too bad with this 1.6 litre engine. Better than it would have been originally, of course. Oh, this is very likeable. Sadly, a lot of these have now got very silly suspension and often hugely powerful engines, but aren't really what these vehicles were always about. I love that this was still being used as regular family transport. It's exactly what it was built for. Family transport and the odd camping trip. And I find that truly marvellous. you going to let me out, or are you just going to pull in front of me like that? You're just going to pull out in front of me like that. It would have been a lot easier to turn your trailer if you hadn't done that. Are you letting me out? No, you're not letting me out. And I'm going anywhere. So yeah, while it makes no sense to have the engine, too much, so far away really, and in the load area where you might prefer it not to be in a van, it is at least quiet. It makes quite a charming little sort of puttering noise. You can hear the fan, the engine fan at work, but you also get that slightly offbeat sound of a flat four that's very like a Subaru really. Those engines are a popular conversion for these for reasons I don't understand at all. Because frankly this doesn't feel underpowered with this later 1.6 litre engine. I can see why you might want something a bit more than the original engines, especially those early 1200s. Feed the big wheel. It's a lovely driving position. A very characterful noise. Puts us up to 60 kilometers an hour, 43 miles an hour. I think, or is that 37? No, it might be 37 thinking about it. But yeah, I've got ventilation flowing in through this vent above my head. I've got the windows open as well. So it feels quite cool, despite the fact here I am in Australia, driving this originally British Volkswagen Type 2. I mean, it's perfectly easy to see what the appeal of these vehicles was. I don't think they were vastly expensive. Very simple mechanically, if a little tricky to work on in some regards, but it's a really nice driving position, and it's actually really easy to drive. I have driven a Citroen H van to Sweden and back, and can confirm that it was nowhere near this light and pleasant to drive. Look at that. 2 Citroen BXs. Blimey. The brakes are all drum, and checking there's no one behind me. Yeah, they're not. I might increase my gappage slightly, because that is not the most powerful braking in the world. I can see why people do upgrade that. I'll allow that as an upgrade. I mean, the ride is feeling a little bouncy in places. It's not bad. Simple swing axle rear suspension, just like all the early Beetles, but let's face it. Oh, actually, let's go and do a bit of motorway. These were not built with performance in mind. You weren't meant to be checking around a Kombi. You corner like this fairly slowly. Where should we go? Oh, let's go that way. This might get a bit slow. It's the start of a bank holiday weekend, or public holiday weekend here in Australia. I think we'll be alright once we get onto the road. I think I'm meant to be going the other way on the road, but I'm not very good at listening to instructions. Got the police sitting there, keeping an eye on things. What a big ugly thing that is. And a very serious camping trailer. Look at the state of that. Australians like to do things properly. So we're up to 80. I can already hear things are getting a bit revvy. These air-cooled engines very tough, so you can drive the long distance without issue. But oh, it's 80 kilometres an hour through the roadworks anyway, so this is absolutely fine. Lovely and comfortable. And the big organ pedal, throttle pedal, very comfortable underfoot. Oh wow, and now we can go to 110 kilometers an hour. Are you ready for that? I'm not sure this van is. Oh, Ford Falcon Ute, poverty spec, steel wheels ahoy. Oh, she picks up well. I was going to say that's 100 kilometers an hour, but that is allegedly. I've been told the speedo doesn't read all that accurately. But the Land Cruiser's having to work hard to get past me though. But frankly, that feels fast enough. So even if that's actually 90, I don't think I want to go any faster than that. Should mention it's all synchro mesh on the gearbox. I'm not sure if it would have been original. I think it probably would have been by the time this one was built. Certainly wouldn't have been on early Beetles, no synchro on first. But something else about the gear lever, it's just a little bit too low. It would be nice to have it a little closer to hand, and that's actually a trait it shares with the T4 Transporter, which was the first of the front wheel drive ones. I used to drive one of those for a living, and it was a constant source of annoyance that the gear lever was just a little bit too far away. Especially when you're in town, you're doing a lot of gear changes. You want the handle to be a bit closer to hand. It's not a huge thing, but it is one of those things you pick up when you do quite a bit of driving. But yeah, I mean, it's a very easy gearbox to use. I mean, it's a very easy car to drive. Maybe it is a car if it's a Kombi. Very easy vehicle to drive. Which certainly was not universally the case when you look at commercial vehicles from a long time ago, as I have said. Yeah, I just love the simplicity and the engineering as well. I mean, I'm not a Volkswagen fanboy. I don't get massively excited about Volkswagens, but yeah, it's nice to drive a bog standardish one, bar the wheels and the slight power upgrade, and be reminded how good these actually were. People are so quick to modify these vehicles because they're used to driving modern vehicles and they don't like the way these drive, or they just want to utterly ruin them for looks. That may be a matter of opinion, but I think if you're slamming a vehicle, chopping the front end and bringing the wheels inboard, yeah, you're destroying the ride and handling for not very much benefit, I would argue. I know there are many people who will no doubt disagree with me in the comments anytime now. But this is lovely to drive, so charming, and this super cute face. Yeah, I am really enjoying this one. It's definitely one of my favourite drives. I was going to say of the year, but it's still only January, it's a bit early for that. If you want to know more about these vehicles and what they're like to work on, and a bit more detail about the engines, go and check out Musty One. Many of you are probably already watching his videos anyway. He's based over in America. He does a lot of stuff on these and getting motorbikes back to life and stuff like that. So yeah, definitely go and check out Musty One. Very interesting channel. Very long videos, I'll warn you now. You may lose yourself for days. Well, that concludes a very interesting drive. Definitely one of my favourite vehicles so far. But just before we go, you remember this is a Volkswagen Type 2 T1. Well, over the other side of the road, I've managed to find a T2. So this is a Type 2 T2. This is the replacement from 1967. A fair bit larger overall than the Type 1 here, with a lovely colourful collection of wheelie bins. But note the wiper pattern. Australia was the only market where the right-hand drive T2s had right-hand drive wipers. They didn't bother changing them for the UK, and I don't think they changed them for New Zealand either, but it was a legal requirement here. Australia, quite rightly, insisted that wipers should suit where the steering wheel is. So an interesting little aside there that I wasn't quite expecting as I brought you this Volkswagen Transporter test drive. But yeah, I mean, just look at that adorable little face. You could forgive that face pretty much anything, couldn't you? So I'm going to say thank you very much for watching this latest Hubnut video. Don't forget you can head to the Hubnut store and buy lovely Hubnut merchandise. There are subscribe and join buttons somewhere near this video if you're watching on a computer that you may wish to click. You may wish to not click those, that's fine. But otherwise, I'm going to say thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Farewell. Anyone fancy a cream tea?